Victorian scientists were obsessed with ghosts, not as a metaphor for human ignorance, not as a symbol of lost love, but as actual, lingering, translucent dead people who might one day agree to be weighed, measured, and politely interviewed in a controlled laboratory setting. This was the same century that gave us the steam engine, the telegraph, germ theory, and anesthesia, but it also gave us séances, ectoplasm, and a whole generation of men in waistcoats holding hands around tables and whispering into the dark, "If there's anyone there, please manifest." For a culture so devoted to reason, the Victorians spent a shocking amount of time trying to scientifically prove that their grandmothers were still floating around the parlor, and the results were spectacularly unhinged, the haunted birth of the scientific spirit. It's the middle of the 19th century, and the world is being remade by science. Telegraph wires stretch across continents, locomotives roar through fields, and people are starting to suspect that the universe runs on discoverable laws, not divine whims. But there's a problem. Nobody has yet invented antibiotics, and life expectancy is still hovering around hope you make it past 40. Death was everywhere. Intimate, domestic, and deeply inconvenient. Children died in the same bedrooms where their siblings slept. Husbands watched wives fade away from diseases with names that sound like 18th century curses: consumption, apoplexy, childbed fever. So the Victorians, surrounded by corpses and comforted by technology, began to ask a dangerously modern question. If electricity can bring a dead frog's leg to life, what could it do for an entire human? If a telegraph can send messages across oceans, why not across the ultimate distance, death itself? The ghosts, it seemed, might simply be waiting for the right scientific instrument. The Fox sisters. When death got a soundtrack. It started, as all good horrors do, with two teenage girls and a house that wouldn't shut up. In 1848, in the sleepy town of Hydesville, New York, Maggie and Kate Fox began hearing strange knocking sounds in their home. The sisters were 13 and 15, old enough to be bored, young enough to make chaos sound like curiosity. When the rapping continued night after night, they decided to communicate. They invented a code: 1 knock for yes, 2 for no. Soon, the supposed ghost of a murdered peddler was answering questions. The neighbors gathered. The knocks got louder, and within months the girls were performing their spectral Q&As in packed halls across America. The Victorians, with their chronic case of death anxiety, lost their collective minds. Here was proof that the afterlife was not a theological concept, but a literal telegram from beyond. The Fox sisters' fame spread across the Atlantic faster than cholera, and suddenly spiritualism, the belief that the dead could communicate with the living, became a cultural phenomenon. Mediums sprouted everywhere, parlor tables rapped, trumpets floated, and respectable women began moaning in trance states while their husbands took notes. Spiritualism wasn't a cult. It was a lifestyle trend, like yoga for the eternally bereaved, and while most scientists rolled their eyes, a growing number decided to investigate, rigorously, experimentally, and ideally without the cheesecloth ghost falling out of anyone's dress. Sir William Crookes and the ghost in the laboratory. If you were a Victorian physicist, the respectable thing to do was invent something useful, like the cathode ray tube or a better version of chloroform. Sir William Crookes did both, but he also became one of the first scientists to claim he had scientifically proven the existence of a ghost. In the 1870s, Crookes turned his laboratory into a supernatural stage. His main subject was a young medium named Florence Cook, who claimed she could materialize a spirit called Katie King. Crookes set up instruments, took photographs, and reported that a luminous female form appeared in his lab, intelligent, beautiful, and, according to his very detailed notes, entirely tangible. There were problems. Katie King looked suspiciously like Florence Cook in a white robe. Witnesses noticed that the spirit had the same height, hair, and handwriting as the medium, but Crookes insisted the phenomenon was real, He weighed objects, measured temperature changes, and took pulse readings during séances. He was convinced ghosts obeyed physical laws, just subtler ones. The Royal Society was less convinced. His colleagues whispered that he'd gone mad or fallen in love with his ghost. And yet Crookes's conviction wasn't born of madness. It came from faith in science itself. If nature followed rules, then even the supernatural must have a system. Ghosts weren't miracles. They were undiscovered physics.